Meanwhile, the lab leak theory is gaining more traction. Circumstantial evidence is growing. Did the virus come out of the Wuhan laboratory? That question remains. We do not have a definitive answer, but there are significant leads. And tonight I want to tell you about a mine. It is on the outskirts of China, and it could have a link to the Wuhan lab. According to a report, in April 2012, 6 miners fell ill. They had gone inside this mine in China's Yunnan province. When they came out, they had a pneumonia-like illness. They were sick. 3 of them died of this illness. So what was their affliction? There is no clarity. At that point, their illness was described as mysterious. And to solve that mystery, scientists from the Wuhan Institute of Virology were called in. They were called to Yunnan, to that mine. They conducted their research. They took samples from bats in that mine in Yunnan and apparently identified several new coronaviruses in those samples. But China does not want to tell the world about them. Which coronaviruses were found in the mine in Yunnan? What did they do with those samples? What kind of research was conducted? No answers. Not only has China hidden information, it has obstructed independent investigation. Reports say China has blocked efforts to probe this mine. Checkpoints have been set up near the mine. Unidentified men have stopped several foreign journalists in recent weeks from trying to go there. So what is China trying to hide in this mine in Yunnan? Was this the starting point of China's research into bat coronaviruses? While the specifics are not clear, the Wuhan laboratory is said to have more than 1,000 samples of coronaviruses. And there is no doubt that Wuhan is the original epicenter of this pandemic. There is increasing evidence that the Wuhan lab is linked to the outbreak, which is why more and more experts say that the lab leak hypothesis must be investigated. The Health Secretary of the United States has also called for a second investigation into the origins.
Phase 2 of the COVID origin study must be launched with terms of reference that are transparent, science-based, and give international experts the independence to fully assess the source of the virus and the early days of the outbreak. As member states of the WHO, we need to come together and finish this fight against COVID, our greatest test. We need to fully implement and adhere to obligations under the international health regulations. We need to improve transparency, immediately share critical information about outbreaks with pandemic potential, and strengthen health systems to withstand shocks.
There are more connections that need to be explored. For instance, the data that China has about this virus. China has refused to share raw data. And the gap is so glaring that even Dr. Tedros of the World Health Organization has raised it. Last year, the WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros, was applauding China's response. But since March this year, he has been saying that he is not satisfied with what Beijing has shared, and he has demanded more evidence. While briefing member states of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros shared this assessment. He said that scientists need access to full data to understand what happened in the early days. Specifically, they need data including biological samples from at least September 2019. But when Dr. Tedros spoke with investigators who went to Wuhan, he was told that they faced difficulties in accessing this data. And their report was made without access to this crucial data. And this is the reason why Dr. Tedros has refused to dismiss the lab theory. He said the assessment by the World Health Organization team was not extensive enough. So since we do not have specific data from China, the claims around a lab leak remain limited to circumstantial evidence. And yet, scientists around the world continue to demand another investigation. They want to further probe the possibility of a lab leak. This month, 18 prominent scientists published a letter. They are calling for a new investigation, and they have given reasons why. These scientists believe, and I'm quoting, that theories of accidental release from a laboratory and zoonotic spillover both remain viable. Meaning, A lab origin is very much a possibility. And this letter has been signed by a virologist who worked closely with Shi Zhengli. You may remember her. Shi Zhengli is a top Chinese virologist. She's better known as China's Batwoman. She was leading the research into bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan laboratory. And now one of her colleagues has signed a letter demanding a probe into the lab theory. And that's not all. A former chief of America's Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, has also called for another investigation. Scott Gottlieb believes that the circumstantial evidence so far is credible and that there is no new evidence in favor of a natural origin. He said that scientists are yet to find an intermediate host, and they haven't found the Wuhan virus in animals anywhere, besides bats, of course. So what do all these statements and stories tell you? There are more questions than answers right now, but there is enough evidence for the world to not dismiss the lab leak theory. A new investigation could help in settling the doubts. But China is already pushing back on this demand, and the only way to find the answers then is to keep asking the question that we're asking. Is China hiding something about the Wuhan laboratory? WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.